Morning, everybody. Welcome to the session from the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre, Staying Safe in a Digital World. It's great to see you here and welcome everybody. My name's Mark Moore. We'll do some more intros in a moment. I'm just going to wait here in the role of usher while people wander into the room. Morning to you, Brenda, who is the first person to have spotted the chat. Everybody do say hello in the chat. Do share details. If anybody's wearing long trousers this morning, we think you're slightly mad, but we're very impressed nonetheless. So do let us know where you're dialing in from and say hello to everybody else. Any comments or questions that you have during the course of the event, please do drop into that chat. And it's lovely to see you here this morning. I'm going to pass over in just a second to Mark Shelford. Mark is the Police and Crime Commissioner for the Avon and Somerset Force and actually leads nationally in terms of fraud and cyber. So, Mark, it's great to have you along this morning. If I can see that we've got something like 33 people now in the room. So, folks, only thing I will say, this session, clearly you are not camera on and communication is via chat, so please do use it. We do, however, record the session so it can be made available to you and to others afterwards. So we hope that's okay. Lovely to see you. And without further ado, Mark, I will pass the virtual microphone over to you.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. And welcome everybody to today's session. It's going to be incredibly useful for all of us, I think. You always learn at these events, and it's great hearing of other people's experience and knowledge to build up your own. To start with, I just want to touch on the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner before explaining a little bit more about my national portfolio and the importance of working together to tackle fraud, including cybercrime, and particularly prevention. Prevention in this area is so much more important than tidying up after an event, and that's what we have to help build our SMEs and the public and make them much more resilient and resistant to this type of crime. So what does a Police and Crime Commissioner do? By law, I have to do a number of things. For example, I have to produce a police and crime plan which sets out the strategic direction of the police service and the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. Now, that was built around my manifesto, and it was certainly endorsed by the public, not least because I was a candidate for 2.25 years. I was knocking on an awful lot of doors, or virtually phoning people when I couldn't go out and visit them because of COVID. Under my plan, which has recently been published on our website, and please do go and read it if you get the chance, there are 4 priorities for Avon and Somerset Police. The first is preventing and fighting crime. The second is engaging, supporting and working with communities, victims and partner organisations. The third is leading the police to be more efficient and effective. And then finally, increasing legitimacy of and public confidence in the police and the criminal justice system. That's the whole spectrum of the criminal justice system. And I am the chair of the local criminal justice board. So it takes it from the first time you might meet a police officer all the way through to probation and then settling back into the community. And of course, prevention, again, is really important in that aspect. I want the police to be reassuring communities by building a culture that puts the emphasis of policing back into prevention of crime. This means that police need to strengthen partnership working, have greater visibilities in their communities, including in the cyber community, better engagement with communities, a focus on early intervention, reducing reoffending. And we all know, well, maybe people don't know, but and I certainly didn't know until I became involved in this world, that of the people that go to prison, 80% of them have been in prison before. So if you can focus on that group of people who you know well, because they've got a track record, you know where they live, etc., and you can stop them reoffending, you can reduce crime significantly. And that is an area which I'm spending quite a lot of time focusing on. And finally, to improve the outcomes and support to victims and witnesses of crime. The creation of the Police and Crime Plan is an example of engaging the local people in itself, not least because it came from the manifesto, knocking on doors, but also continuing to listen to the community, both by myself, by my office and the police officers of Avon and Somerset. And it's about improving the service we deliver and strengthen public confidence in trust. I was emailed this morning about an incident last night in Bath, where a person had wanted to try and phone the police in order to prevent a crime happening, put onto 101 and didn't get a proper connection. And after half an hour got bored and stopped. And this is an absolute failure. We need to focus on this and make sure that we do get involved in these things early, and we have the right numbers in the right place to do that. I believe that Avon and Somerset Police can deliver real change and improvements under the priorities that I've set. But the most important thing is to listen and engage with those local people to understand what their problems are. And this comes full circle to cyber crime, because the reason I took up this national portfolio was that when I was knocking on the doorstep or ringing people, I was stunned and amazed by how many people had been affected by this type of crime on the doorstep. And I thought, goodness me, we really need to do something about it. Just continuing a little bit more about the priorities. You know that I want to ensure that the police are as efficient and as effective as they can be within the community. And the golden thread that runs through that is about prevention. And I asked right at the beginning, when I had an experience of going on a ride along with a very successful drug operation where we got ahead of a particular organization. But the process of booking in, booking out, going to court, booking in, booking out, etc., absorbed an enormous amount of time. There were endless paper forms that needed to be filled in with lots of the same material. So when I arrived, I asked, could the chief constable and the team look at how to make that more effective, particularly make it digital and make sure it's protected, but also that digital platform could link to the MOJ of the court system. And that in itself, about sharing data and all the issues around GDPR, was an issue. But we got there in the end. And the final aspect of the PCC's role is to contribute to the Home Secretary's requirements for national and international policing. This is interesting, of course, because quite a lot of digital crime takes place, about 70% or 75% takes place with an international piece to it. And so we need that international liaison and those agencies that can work abroad in order to chase down the criminals and make sure that they understand that the UK is a hostile place to taking any type of digital crime. So as a consequence of my time as a candidate, I volunteered to take responsibility for the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners for Economic and Cyber Crime. I want the work of the APCC to ensure that the police tackle online crime, fraud, harassment, hacking, economic crime, and identity theft. Because we hear about identity theft a lot in the newspapers and perhaps on television. But actually, the reality is it does happen, and it happens far too often. 1 in 10 people fall victim to fraud, and 1 in 3 become repeat victims. And that is appalling. We really need to focus on that, preventing people becoming repeat victims. I want to make sure that the profile type of this life-destroying crime is raised. I want government to know this and really understand, and also from a policing perspective, make sure that we put the right amount of resources into fighting this type of crime and preventing it. If what you believe is true, that is published in the newspapers, that more than 50% of all types of crime at the moment are some form of cyber and fraud connected and online digital sexual exploitation. We're not putting nearly that amount of resource into preventing it and fighting it, and we need to wake up and smell the coffee. And that takes certain issues around making sure that we've got the right people who are knowledgeable, trained and capable in those jobs. And so to be part of the Southwest Cyber Resilience Forum is fantastic and a really important part. And I'll come on to that in a little bit more. We really need to raise the awareness about these different types of frauds and techniques within the population, and to raise their ability to be more resilient and resistant to this type of crime. And as part of that, I produced a postcard that has gone out to all the grown-ups over 65 with some simple steps about how to keep safe, both online, but also on the telephone and on the doorstep. Very simple, work through with a lot of other people, but this postcard, which can be stuck next to their landline phone, because most of them will still have a landline phone, just gives them that calming influence of having a read and not to be flustered by whoever's on the phone or on the computer trying to get them to make an instant decision to move money. Raising awareness also in government, and I'm meeting the Security Minister tomorrow night to talk through some of these simple aspects that we need to work through in general across the country. So let's focus on the Southwest Resilience Centre. Those of you here today understand the importance of the cyber threat to the business community, and particularly to SMEs. I was an SME before I became a politician. I ran my own company and I worked with a number of small companies who had been affected by cyber threat. And I know how awful it is, and it's really important that we put some focus into it around that SME piece. Government figures show that 2 in 5 businesses have had an attempted cyber breach every year, which is why policing is investing in new approaches to try and reach out and help prevent businesses and individuals falling victim. Hence, the great work formed by the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre. It is a public-private partnership recognising the need to support the expertise of the business community in order to make inroads and to protect those SMEs. To that end, thanks to the Southwest Business Council and Business West for getting behind today's event with their own support, marketing and guidance regarding the contents of today. Both groups regularly participate in the Cyber Resilience Centre advisory group, and we are grateful for their support. And I know that the Southwest Business Council CEO, Paul Coles, who is on this call, will join us shortly and say a few words. Today's events are centred around a top-level expertise from the cyber sector, and we're grateful to all those speakers giving up their time to speak, but also for the people who put it together, Mark and Leslie and everybody else who came together to make this work. They will be sharing some of the genuinely eye-opening stories about how your data has been taken and misused by criminals. However, today is not just about interesting stories, it's also about what you can do practically to protect yourself and your business. Today's events will conclude with a short briefing about the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre and how you can support it. I strongly encourage you to take advantage of the support that they can offer you, and tell your colleagues and others in business to do the same. The more of us that are protected, the safer place the Southwest will be to do business. And I want to make sure it is a hostile place for criminals to work in the space. So to close, I hope you find this morning's session useful. If you have any questions, for myself about being the PCC, about my national portfolio, please do not hesitate to get in touch. And many thanks for you listening today. And I'm happy just to take a couple of questions before I sadly have to depart for another meeting.
Thank you, Mark. It looks like I'm scanning the chat, and it looks as though we're question free. Around brilliantly and left everybody in the state of total comprehension. In which case, just thank you from us for opening today. And if I may, I can invite Kyle Bowes onto the stage. And Kyle, I believe you're going to open with our first cyber presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Can you just jump back on stage and just let me know that you can hear and see me before I speak for 20 minutes to myself?
Kyle, you are loud and clear.
Perfect. Okay, well, for those joining us, I think I'm probably going to be the most northern today. I've seen a lot of Torquay and Exeter. I'm up in, I would say, overcast Edinburgh, and I'm reliably informed in 27 minutes it's going to start to rain. So hope you all enjoy your heat wave while we're in the humidity, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, today I'm going to be covering a presentation on exploiting open source information. We're going to have a kind of a run through of what it is, how it can be used to exploit SMEs, and we have a little mini agenda. There'll be time for questions throughout today's session. Please just use the chat function, and I've got a little Q&A slot after the slides to answer those. I am hanging about for the rest of the session, so if something pops into your head later on, just let me know. On my final slide, there's also contact details via email or LinkedIn. So if you have a question that you're not wanting to ask in public or in front of others, please just connect to me on either that platform or send me an email, and we can go from there. So before we dive into it, just a little overview of kind of me and my background, as well as Hyper9 and what we do here. So back in kind of the early to mid 2000s, two people called Colin McLean and Dr. Natalie Kuhl thought there might be a cyber skills gap in about a decade. So they were really thinking ahead of the curve. And they decided to create a program called Ethical Hacking, which is a Bachelor of Science degree up at a small university in Scotland. And this was back in 2006, and the program's been running for about a decade and a half now. I attended the program and qualified with a BSc in Ethical Hacking before moving to work in government. Throughout my studies, I worked on behalf of UK and then upon graduation worked there in a permanent role. That role was predominantly offensive cybersecurity operations or computer hacking to the normal person. And that job is just as fun as it sounds. Brilliant experience working with some of the smartest people in the world on some really complex problems. So a really enjoyable kind of start to my career. I currently manage a cyber defence programme for the UK's largest pension and insurance mutual, where we run a multi-million-pound cybersecurity programme here, big team of engineers, and lots of difficult problems to solve. I also co-found and direct at Hyper9. We are, I suppose, a little boutique cybersecurity company. And we were founded on the basis that working with lots of big cybersecurity companies, vendors, and consultants, we found they were really expensive and they don't tend to understand business very well. So they might be great at coming in and saying, here is how we run a really secure business, but they tend not to think about the customers you have, the data you need to process, how you route to market, how you work with marketing teams and third parties. And they become very kind of theoretical and subject matter heavy, not thinking about the practicalities of the business. Some of our work has been things like working with the BBC and ITV behind the scenes on their cybercrime prevention programs, making sure they're technically accurate, making sure the work delivered there is high quality and is easy to digest by the public. To that end, if I use any technical jargon today that you're not quite sure what it means, just put it in the chat. That's not your fault. That's me for being daft and using technical terms. It shouldn't happen, but if it does, feel free to ask in there. Alongside that, we work with footballers, high net worth individuals, normally to secure their communications for them and their families, especially if they're travelling abroad, or if they have multiple houses. We will make sure that their home networks are safe and secure too. For small and medium-sized enterprises, we have a primary focus on providing cybersecurity consultancy as a service, or what we call CISO as a service. We've found that in the market, a lot of small and medium-sized enterprise companies might have one or two people in IT, maybe 3 or 4 if they're on that medium size, but they don't have a dedicated security person, and normally a senior person in IT doesn't have that security expertise. Now, unfortunately, for these small and medium-sized enterprises, security expertise is expensive and difficult to get a hold of at that scale. So what we normally do is go into business 1 or 2 days a month and help them build their security program that is business focused. So we get them to a level of assurance and resilience without them bursting the bank and having a dedicated security person who they have to train and maintain and look after. So I suppose for SMEs, that's a big focus and that gap that we tend to fill for a lot of SMEs. We do this kind of up and down the country, so we're not just up in Scotland, and it tends to be good fun seeing, small charities go from this. We've got 1 or 2 people in IT, we're not really sure what they're doing, upskilling those members in IT and building a security program that they can confidently sit behind. Anyway, that's enough about me and what I do at Hyper9. We'll jump into the main presentation just now. So a high-level agenda is what's open source, how attackers can use it, a case study that we worked on, and then also a bit of a summary on how we target SMEs and what you should be doing to protect yourself from this type of attack. I'll then go into the Q&A. Like I said, please use the chat feature throughout if you do have any questions that pop up. So first of all, what is open source? Open source is information that can be discovered publicly by anybody. Seems relatively simple when it comes in multiple forms. An example of this might be a social media feed that you have, like a LinkedIn for Business page, or it could be the electoral roll if people have registered to be on the electoral roll. Websites also count, and we'll walk through how this can be used by attackers as well. So if we think about the South West Cyber Resilience Centre, if we were going to try and break in here, what open source could we use? So if you jump on the South West Cyber Resilience Centre's website, swcrc.co.uk, and click on About Us, you can see about their team, the directors, their board, the advisory group, all these sorts of things. So we can start to discover who works there. And they all have a little synopsis of their bio of what they're interested in, what they do for work. And lots of other companies' websites are like that. I'm not going to pick on another company, but we're the Southwest today, so let's use them as a really good example. So if you go onto your company website, have a think about what information is there about your employees and how could that be used. So looking at the dynamic of the Southwest, they have a core team and then an advisory group and a board. So if we think of Mark as the director here, Mark will get access to a lot of information, company account, banking, his emails will be rich and full of information. So let's say we want to go after Mark. Well, in open source, we can go on the website and learn about who Mark is and what he does, but then also who sits on the board, and we start to build that relationship. So if someone's sitting on the board, Mark's going to want to speak to them regularly, be in touch with them. So if he gets an email from the board asking them for something or to look at a document, Mark's likely going to reply. So when we start thinking about how we're going to craft an attack against the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre, now the website's a great place to start. We can learn about the people, who has power, who are we interested in, who's likely going to have senior access, and use that as an information gatherer. It's not just about the website. We can have a look on their LinkedIn too. So let's have a look on Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre LinkedIn, and we can see there's a webinar running today. How would we get after some of their clients? So let's say we want to compromise some SMEs. Let's have a look at who's either marked as attending or is following the page, and let's send them out an email half an hour before the event saying, hey, we've changed the webinar. To join the instructions, have a look at this PDF. We have a malicious PDF in this email, but it's very, very convincing. And this is how quite quickly we can become very convincing trying to target SMEs for relatively low effort. If you think about your website as well, it's registered. So if you go to a website called who.is or whois, it will tell you who that website is registered to. Now, traditionally, probably 10 years ago, that would give people's personal names, email addresses, phone numbers, and home addresses. We've got a bit better at that, and there's now privacy protection in there, but it will show you the types of technologies they use. So for example, if you check who owns the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre, you won't get a name, but it will point to Microsoft Online, so you can take a pretty good guess that you're running something like Office 365 or a Microsoft product for their emails, which is a good place to start. Just to point out that none of this is prior knowledge. I haven't sat down and spoke with Mark about the technologies they use or their website. Anything like this. These are just things that we can use to discover. And again, think about your own business. What is available out there online to discover about it. For organisations in the government supply chain, and I've seen some people in the chat were talking about being part of the supply chain for DWP and other government departments, FOIA becomes extremely powerful. So the Freedom of Information Act becomes very, very powerful if you're a computer hacker trying to break into an organisation. I'll walk through a previous engagement we've done against a government department to emphasise how powerful this can be. We posed as salespeople, saying that we were trying to sell them IT equipment, so we wanted to know about the current IT equipment they have and how it's used. Now, rather than asking for that, we asked for far too much information. We asked for serial numbers, we asked for operating system versions, we asked for the people who use them, version numbers, full shooting match, thinking that we're going to get a reply saying that information is not valid, but here's how many we have and here's how much they cost. Now, people under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, especially people running FOIA offices, don't have time sometimes to do that. And we took advantage of this, where we had a FOIA response, which included the version numbers, serial numbers, operating system versions. And actually very quickly, we got a deep understanding of the technology stack, what technologies that were used and where. And this allowed us to plan a way of breaking into this organization using FOIA. Again, if you're part of government supply chain, those communications between you and government may be able to be FOIA'd. So think about the information you're sharing with your partner and how the Freedom of Information Act could be abused to get that information. A lot of people think about this, and we've used it in numerous security engagements in the past to successfully break into clients. The last example I'll give is kind of a two-pronged approach to this open source weaponization, and it was against a chemical lab run by a university. The university ran kind of stage 2 biochemical lab, which is going to be super protected for the information it's holding and the physical chemicals it's processing. So we took a two-pronged approach. First of all, we FOIA'd the university and the supply chain for a delivery contract, so who delivers to and from the site, because again, we're salespeople, we're looking to bid on that. It's generally quite a good tactic to get you information you need. So we had the name of the organisation they were paying for deliveries, and we also were given the schedule and the weight and size of the lorries they require. So it's quite a lot of detailed information about access to this biochemical lab. And then we had a look on LinkedIn. We looked at all of the staff who worked in the security team there and found that they all had a list of qualifications. These qualifications were all really similar and all dated in the last year or two, which were qualifications on an electronic lock-in system. So very quickly, we'd gone from having no idea about this chemical lab to who the suppliers were, what time they arrived, and how they arrived, as well as the technical security controls they had in, and the lock-in systems and electronic security they used based on their LinkedIn qualifications of their staff. Now, this sounds a bit extreme, and you might be saying, thinking, well, I'm just a small business, so how does that apply to me? And the premise that we're getting at is, if you do have a couple of members of staff, just think about what you're posting on LinkedIn. Have a little social media policy to say, do these things and don't do these things. When you're engaging with suppliers, either up or down the supply chain, have a think about the information they're sharing and whether connecting on LinkedIn and posting about the great work you're doing together could bring in an element of additional risk from a cyber perspective. Attackers use open source really, really aggressively. The better you plan and the more you know about your target, the more likely you are to be successful. Think about anything. If you're going on a holiday and you plan it a year in advance and you have an itinerary and everything to take with you, it's going to be a lot easier to go and enjoy that holiday than it is if you rock up at the airport with 3 bags and say, right, we're going on holiday today. And they say, oh, have you got your COVID passport? Oh, forgot that. Where's your passport in the house? Didn't, oh, forgot this, forgot that. So, transition that into like an offensive cyber operation. What we really want to focus on is the prepare work in this stage. So just be cautious and mindful of what you've got online and what your staff are doing online too. Moving on to social media, and this isn't just at LinkedIn, it's also kind of about your personal lives on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever social media platforms you're using. They suffer from this thing called the appending issue, and this really became apparent in the last couple of years. When you think about a post on social media, it's made in isolation. Just off to get dinner or just checking in at the airport. What else do you post on social media? That's not what I see on my feeds anyway. People on holiday, people out taking photographs of their dinner, whatever they're doing. From a business perspective, you might talk about landing a new client or visiting a site or a new facility you've got, something like that. And you post in isolation, so you post and post and post and you post, and all these little posts add up. Now, Facebook's been running for about 15 years, and most people have probably been active users for about a decade at this point. So the decade of Facebook status updates or tweets or Instagram posts potentially out there. If you've got rubbish security settings and anyone in the world can see your Facebook or Twitter page, be aware of that. If I can look back over the last 10 years of all your status updates and what you've been doing, oh, my son was born, that's first day at nursery, first day at primary school, first day at high school. I can see all that. I have a chronological order of what's been happening in your life for the last decade. And targeting you with a phishing email, a really targeted phishing email, becomes very easy. Clay, who's presenting after me, will come into a bit more about phishing, but this reconnaissance work against individuals is really important. As an SME, normally your home life and personal life are quite closely linked, especially if you're just a small one-person or two-person business. And that personal information leveraged to target your business can become really powerful. So all I'd say is be mindful about what you're posting on there. And if you're going to do anything, have a little look for your security settings. Who can see all of your posts? Who can see who you're friends with? Who can see what you're doing day to day? It's really, really important. But not just for you. Think about your parents or grandparents or kids or grandkids, any vulnerable people you've got in your life. Have a think about them. The problem with cybersecurity is that it's complex and there's not a lot of expertise. So people lose out on this type of information. So after today, have a sit down when you're having dinner tonight, have a chat and say, or probably a barbecue actually, have a chat and say, have a look through your Facebook settings, have a look through your LinkedIn settings. You don't have to be super invasive, but it's always good to look after people around you, especially in something like cyber where it is very complex and can get quite dangerous quite quickly. Briefly, I just want to cover a high-profile case study targeting what is a small and medium-sized enterprise who we worked with. So James and Samantha are not their real names, but they are a couple we worked with. Now, James owns a fairly successful kind of small to medium-sized enterprise, leading towards medium-sized at this point. And Samantha, his wife, has a really popular Instagram account, focusing on like homeware, posting about the house and fashion and all sorts. They've been having clients for just over a year now, and their biggest concern was when their house was robbed. And this is what we call a cyber-enabled crime. Now, after kind of the last couple of years, they decided to go on holiday. Really excited to go, really nice holiday, probably nicer than any holiday I've ever been on. It looked brilliant. Got to the airport and checked in. Samantha was posting on Instagram in the lounge for a little cocktail. Landed at the villa, here's the pool, here's what we're doing. Kind of daily updates on an Instagram account for kind of all of our followers as a bit of an Instagram influencer. James had his out of office on, posted a couple of photos online as well saying, here's what I'm doing. He actually posted on his work account, just to some of his employees to say, here's what I'm doing on my break. It's important to take time away. I'm doing it as well. Set a bit of a role model for making sure people are taking breaks. Fast forward 3 weeks, they land back in the country, checking at the airport, and get home, and the house is empty. Everything's been stolen. Nice tellies, games consoles, a lot. And what had happened is, or our assumption is, that an organised crime group had been looking at the social media accounts. Because Samantha has this home account, the internals of their home were pretty easy to see, where the valuables were, how nice some of their stuff was, and they were robbed blind because of this, live stream of their life on a public social media channel. Now, fortunately, they had home insurance, so they give the home insurance company a call and they say, yeah, we'll send someone out. Someone comes out and says, yep, there's nothing left in your house, we'll get your claim processed. And before they'd done that, they went and had a look at James and Samantha's social media accounts, which again were public. They found that they were out of the country for 20 days, and actually their home insurance covered them for 14 days contiguous absence from the UK. So it was an unlimited number of days, but contiguously they could only be away for 14 days. This invalidated the house insurance, and they did not get the claim paid. So a really extreme example of where a cyber-enabled crime can cause you problems in the real world via like a burglary, which isn't just the physical loss of stuff, but the emotional damage it has, and also the confidence knock it had on Samantha and what she was doing at the time. So again, when you're traveling or you're traveling with your kids, just be super careful about how often you're posting about being away. Have you got cameras at home, or do your neighbours know you're on holiday and just keeping an eye out on your house for you? I think during the pandemic, some people have got a lot closer with the neighbours and some people have drifted. So, if you do get on with your neighbours, and I encourage everyone to go and speak to their neighbours, have them say, can you just watch the house away for 2 weeks? Here's our spare key just in case. Could really be the difference between having your house burgled if you're posting a lot on social media and coming back to, a normal house. Just lastly, I wanted to kind of summarise why attacking SMEs via open source is important. It's very low effort. It's just jumping online and having a look. And it's high impact and high value. It's impossible to detect if you're an SME or even if you're a large organisation. It's impossible to detect people doing this type of work. And the main protection is having a robust social media policy, having robust staff training and awareness, and being really confident in what information is out there. It isn't a problem having a social media account and sharing stuff. The problem comes when it gets out of control or you're not aware of what information is out there, because this information can and will be used against you in a targeted email, most likely. People in high pressure and high stress jobs are more likely to fall for phishing attacks, and untrained employees do pose that significant risk. So make sure you have that policy, have a chat with your employees, with your friends and your family, and just let them know to be super careful in there. That's all from me. Again, my email is here on the screen, and if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn and have any questions, feel free to use that platform as well. I'll pause now for some questions, which I think Mark has been thankfully looking at for me. So it would be good to hear any questions you've got.
Carl, thank you for that. I've been looking through, and there are a couple that have dropped into chat that I think we've responded to during the presentation. Okay. So at the moment, I think we're good. What I'm going to suggest is if Clay joins us on stage, we can move on to his presentation. And then if there are questions that pop up, we'll try and deal with those in chat at the tail end if we've got a couple of minutes to do that. But enormous thanks, Carl. You had me feeling really nervous during several parts of that presentation. I'm going to go back and shut down my website now.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for your time. Clay, over to you.
Morning, everybody. So we're going through the cost of phishing. So this is more on the after effects of kind of what Carl's spoken about today. So myself, I'm a security analyst with Bit Security. We're a managed service provider where we provide a MDR, which is Managed Detection and Response Service, and we also provide Cyber Essentials Assisted, and along with penetration testing. And then we've got my specialty within the business, which is security awareness training, but also delivering simulated phishing training. So that's sending companies these phishing emails to try and boost the training that they get from that to see where the risks fall. Just to make sure that we're all aware of what phishing is. So phishing is when you get those malicious emails. So it's an email pretending to be something legitimate, but actually it's trying to entice you to click a link, download a file, or respond with some personal information for them to then breach you further on down the line. So I just want to open up with something that happened not too long ago, where on the 29th of April, so just a couple of months ago, there was a school district which was manipulated into transferring nearly $200,000 to a cybercriminals bank account. And this was carried out by a spear phishing attack. And what they did, they targeted the school district in an attempt to gain funds via a spoofed email, which was sent pretending to be someone called Ben Hill Roofing. And this school district actually had work done recently and worked with this person. It was then discovered later on down the line when the actual Ben Hill Roofing submitted an invoice to the school. So it wasn't an immediate, it was months down the line that they then figured out what actually happened. Thankfully though, they have been able to recover almost all of the funds. There are still some left for them to try and get. It was after a police investigation was carried out on this event, and the funds were traced to a bank in Texas. So it was all American-based, all kept within the country. And the Floyd County schools, they've then made a public quote as well, saying they'd since recovered almost all of the stolen funds following the police investigation. Apologies for the fire alarm. There we go. Following a police investigation, officers traced the stolen money to a bank in Texas, which had already been flagged. So the bank had already flagged this account as being suspicious after they gained an enormous amount of funds without any of kind of due course. So in 2021, Tessian research, they found that employees receive an average of 40 malicious emails per year. But some industries are higher than this and hit particularly hard, with retail workers receiving an average of 49 a year. So that's over 2 a month, over 4 a month that they're receiving these phishing emails. Out of these emails that are sent, one person clicks a link in 86% of organizations, which then relates to phishing, accounting to 90% of data breaches, which is a massive amount of percentage that someone in your organization is likely to click a phishing link. And then phishing attacks, they tend to follow a pattern where they rise by 52% in December, So this is due to the holiday season, causing people to relax and be more enticed to risking opportunities that appear too good to be true and therefore more likely fall victim to phishing emails. It has been determined that of these malicious attacks delivered, 96% arrive by emails. And in terms of phishing, spear phishing, so phishing is a generalized email that they can send to anyone to entice them. Spear phishing, where they've performed the open source reconnaissance, so going through social media, websites, to craft an email dedicated to that one person. And you got whaling, where you're hitting the bigger targets, so you're hitting the CEOs and the directors who sit at a higher level within the company to try and get a bigger payout at the end of it. And then 3% are carried out through malicious websites. So that's where you click a wrong URL, a wrong link. When you're doing a search for a website, you miss a letter, you replace it with a wrong one. Anything like that is where those come into full. And then 1% via phone, which includes smishing, which is text message based, and then phishing, which is when you receive that phone call from an unexpected number, and they're saying your bank account's been breached, and you need to provide details over the phone to get that fixed. There was another research by Semantic Research, and they suggest that throughout 2020, 1 in every 4,200 emails was a phishing email. That's most likely risen since those with the COVID phishing emails that were going out, and now with Ukraine, they tend to take what's happening around the globe to graft these emails to be more dedicated to what's happening and get more likely someone to click on those links. So what types of information is compromised? So this comes in all forms of, when they're trying to compromise your information, it comes in all different forms. It could be a spoofed login page. So it'll give you a pop-up page that looks like an Office 365 login page, or your Gmail account login, or your Facebook. And then it requests the user to enter their information just as they would any other time when they're going onto that site. And all of this information can then be used to gain further compromise, both the individual and the bank accounts that they have, social media accounts, and also the business through allowing them access to sensitive information and accounts, or through other means. So the types of compromise you have credential based, so that's your passwords being taken, your usernames and your PIN numbers as well. This then allows them access into your accounts, but also allows access into systems as well. You got your personal data, so your name is quite common knowledge, but also your addresses, your email addresses, where you've been, what you've been doing, any other information they can pry, and they can then use this down the line as well to form another attack on either yourself or somebody else, to then compromise even more information or gain access to other things. Then they can also get access to your medical information. So these were the top 3: your treatment information, your insurance claims. Try and build that big picture of what's going on in your life. And then the consequences of this: 60% of organizations have lost data due to a social engineering based attack. 52% have had organizations had their credentials or accounts compromised, which then leads to the loss of information and other things down the line. 47% of organizations were infected with ransomware. So that's where potentially they've had their important information in their systems encrypted, and they've been demanded some form of ransom to get that information back, or preventing it from being delivered elsewhere on this online. 29% of organizations were infected with malware. So that's various different types of software, malicious software, that potentially cause damage within the network and on your IT systems. And then 18% of organizations experienced financial loss specifically due to this. So any of these such actions would cause a substantial damage to the organization, resulting into loss of financial assets, reputation as well, and trust from the public or other companies, depending on the specifics of the information that was breached. So in 2021, Risk IQ estimated that businesses worldwide lose $1.7 million per minute due to cybercrime. and that the average breach costs the company $7.2 per minute. Obviously, once that breach takes longer and longer to resolve, 24, 48 hours a week, that number just gains and gains and gains. Then IBM's 2021 research into the cost of data breach ranks the cause of data breaches according to the level of cost they impose on businesses. So phishing ranks as the second most expensive cause of data breaches. A breach caused by a phishing cost businesses an average of 4.65 million, according to IBM, and business email compromise. The type of phishing whereby the attackers hijack or spoof a legitimate corporate email account ranks at number 1, costing businesses an average of $5 million per breach. That's not the only way that phishing can lead to a costly breach. Attacks using compromised credentials were ranked as the 5th most costly cause of a data breach, averaging $4.3 million. And how do credentials get compromised? It's more often than not due to a phishing email that's happened. Then this is all broke down. So in terms of when they make the cost, it's not just the financial, it's the loss of hours from employees. If they don't have access to the information, they can't do any work. And if they try and remediate, then those remediations they're trying to put in place, there's more hours have been lost and more cost which has happened. Then also got the instant response of trying to solve the issue that has now happened due to someone clicking a malicious email or downloading a malicious file. You've got the reputation damage as well. So you have the damaged reputation. So if you've lost personal information for people or for other businesses, they're going to think again about working with you in the future. And then you've got lost intellectual property, which then falls onto the damaged reputation as well. You've got the direct monetary losses. So if you've been infected with ransomware and you've had to pay back, or if someone's spoofed, got the funds out of you directly, this all takes effect. Then you've got the lost revenue and the legal fees on top of that as well to all think about. So we've spoken a lot about the business and kind of how it affects the businesses that you work for and you're part of. But here's a social media event that happened not too long ago, where verified Twitter accounts were being phished by giving hate speech warnings. So what they did, they hijacked verified accounts on any platform, as it's a big win for fraudsters. It gives credibility to their scams, especially when the accounts have large followings. This has been a particularly popular topic to promote NFTs and other crypto-centric scams. Because what they'll do, they'll breach what would be a credible account with a mass following, and then make a post of, you donate to this fund, I'll give you this in return. But actually, it's someone behind the scenes who have made that post and now got you to provide them money directly. What they tend to use, the site hides behind a URL, shortening service, and it claims visitors are logging into a Twitter help center, making use of Twitter's APIs to call up the reporter's test account name. It then asks for their password. It gives them a welcome back message alongside an image of the reporter's profile picture, making it all seem a little bit more real. The phishing site then asks for an email address and appears to be checking behind the scenes to ensure you're entering the correct credentials. It doesn't spam the database, so it's hard to detect from the other side as well, as it gets that information directly from you before inputting it. These are all things to be aware of. It might look true, but there are many things hiding. There could be things hiding in the background to try and steal that information from you. Okay. Now, if we do have any questions at all, we'll be able to go through those for you.
Clay, thank you so much for that. There are a couple of questions in the chat line. I'm going to invite, if it's okay with you, just for you to take a scan through those and maybe put some responses in. People are asking what you do if you click on a phishing link email, what an NFT scam is, and some other bits and pieces too. If you're happy, just so that we can get presentations through, I'll pass over to Paul and we can pick up any conversation afterwards if we've not been able to deal with it in the chat.
Yeah, that's sure. I'll jump out and I'll answer those for you.
Brilliant. Thank
No
you,
worries.
Clay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clay. Thanks, Mark. Are you hearing me okay? Brilliant. Well, we're thrilled to be a partner with the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre on this hugely important issue. You've understood today some of the challenges that are out there around how we police all of this stuff. The actors in this space are getting increasingly clever, but you've made a huge investment here today by joining the call. Thank you for that. I would recommend a couple of things, really. For those of you that haven't engaged in the Cyber Essentials program, please Google that and have a look through. I noticed that on our survey, around 50% had, but Cyber Essentials is backed by world-leading experts and is all about keeping you and your business safe. The second thing I would recommend is that if you haven't joined the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre, please do. It's a free resource, right? It's a free resource that the police forces around the country have set up, and the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre is probably the leading one, if not neck and neck with, I think, only one other area. So we're quite competitive here at the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre. Please join the network. It's free of charge to join. And more than that, when you go and speak with your own personal and business networks, encourage them to join as well. We're on a journey to hit approximately 1,000 members, hopefully in the next few months, I'd like to think. But if I reflect on that, across the Southwest, there are 500,000 SMEs in our territory. So we still have a long way to go. But you've taken an important first step here by being part of this morning. I encourage you to take further steps and speak and work with your own private and business networks to encourage them to join the momentum around making us the most secure region in the UK, with the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre leading the charge on that. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Paul. Really grateful, and for the support. Okay, folks, so I'm going to talk you through very briefly the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre, which you've heard a bit about today, and I just want to tell you what that is and what's in it for you. The really important thing, as Paul rightly says, is that we provide a free basic service. There is no sales pitch angle to this. We do not exist to make money out of small businesses. Quite the reverse. We're here to make sure that small businesses keep their hands on their money and don't pass it over to cyber criminals. So we're here for you, and we would be delighted to try and support you in staying safer in a digital age. We're not here for individuals. We are here very much for that small business community, also for charities. So inevitably, by the law of averages, there'll be people on this call who, do that school governor role, that support local community groups, and those are very often extremely vulnerable because they don't have the resources, the time, or the expertise to look after themselves. We are really happy to support and to try and help. So what does that support look like? The first thing that it looks like is that we will signpost you towards those really important things that you've probably never heard of. And why would you in a busy world? So all the kind of national guidance that you need about what does a good password look like? What the heck is this thing called multi-factor authentication that I've heard drift by on the wind? All these concepts will make sure that you've got the right national guidance, and will contact you to give you support to implement it if you need it. Within the Southwest region, we will also then put you through a 12-week plan. So an email a week, which will be no more than a page long because we've all got busy lives and might take you 10 minutes to implement. But do you know what? If you spend that 10 minutes once a week over 12 weeks, you will be immensely safer than you are at the start of that cyber journey. So, do you know, I often equate it to kind of locking the door in your business premises. You do that without thinking about it, but you can't, in today's world, fail to engage with a bit of cyber hygiene and cyber safety. So let us show you how, because let's be candid, none of us were taught this stuff in school. Really importantly, also, we'll give you a regular update. So I spend a fair old bit of time each month looking through what's gone in the cyber world, and we'll make sure that's translated into plain jargon-free English for you, so that you know what I should click on, what I shouldn't click on, what I should update, and what I should look out for. So you can use it, and of course you can pass it on to your staff so that they've got that basic awareness and they don't leave you exposed. And do you know what? As I often say to people, we've got really good engagement with that. But if you read 1 in 5, then at least 20% of the time, then you're safer than you would have been. So do something rather than do nothing, because it really is easy to get safer online. We've also got some really interesting offerings for you if you're a particularly data vulnerable business, or if perhaps you're significantly web based. We have a fabulous student team from around the region. They're drawn from ethical hackers, and they can come in and look at your technical systems for you, and they'll do that in a way that's very affordable, so you won't pay full commercial rates. So it's tailored as an offer so that we can check whether you're vulnerable, let you know where you might need to sharpen things up, and give you, if you like, the shopping list that you might need to go to a cyber company with, so that you understand the areas where you're running a bit of a risk that perhaps you'd rather not. More than that, the students can offer training, and often we can find that through existing police resources for free. They can look at some of the stuff we've spoken about today, that open source information trawling. What can we find out about you that might compromise you or your business, so that you're really aware of that? And we can look at your continuity plans as well, so that if the worst were to happen, you've got that kind of plan on the shelf that you can take off and know exactly how to respond. So that's the student services. We don't sell products. There are a number of really complex offerings that we don't have, and that's where we'll pass you on then if you need them to a regional partner, somebody like Bit Group, Clay's team that came on the call today. And the reason that we pass on to those companies is because they're operating locally to you. We've got a strong relationship with them, and actually they all offer that Cyber Essentials scheme, which Paul mentioned earlier on the call. Cyber Essentials is a government badge scheme that talks about the basics of cybersecurity for small businesses. So all of the companies that we'll pass you on to know the cybersecurity basics, and we think that's really important because the landscape is fairly unregulated, and if you need help, probably what you don't want to do is give the keys to your digital vault to somebody whose accreditations you just don't understand or recognize. So we'll try and signpost you in the right direction. It's not because we'll get a kickback from that, it's because it's the right thing to do. So look, what you can see in terms of that offer is that the whole purpose of it is to take you from 0 to 60, from the start of your cyber journey, and for those bigger companies, through the accreditation route and through the other support that you might need. So we are here very much for you. We're here for those that work with you. And I often raise that question, the person that does your marketing, does your printing, how safe are they? Because if they're sending you dodgy emails because they've been compromised, then that's a risk to you, isn't it? And last year, 93% of larger businesses were compromised via their third-party network. So that's really worth bearing in mind. This isn't just about you, it's about the people that do business with you as well. So if you haven't signed up, please do consider it. If you know people, please spread the word. And if you're a member of one of those community groups, then again, please do signpost us towards them. And what does that look like, and what do you need to do? Go to our website, as ever. Go to our website, find lots of stuff out about us, just as Kyle has done. But more than that, please go to the membership link. And when you get there, we'll simply ask you some details so that we can contact you via email, pass you the information that you need, and keep you on our mailing list so that you've got the information that you need now and into the future. So that's the Cyber Resilience Centre for the Southwest. We are part of a national policing network. If you have other contacts out of area, please do feel free to get in touch, and we'll signpost them to the right centre for them too. That's not a problem. So I think that's probably it from us today. I'm just going to take a very brief scan through the chat, and I think everything has just about been responded to there. So thank you, ladies and gents. 2 minutes early. It's been fabulous to see so many of you online. We really hope that you found something useful from today's presentation. And I would just like to thank again our fabulous speakers who I'm glad that we didn't have to pay for that level of expertise, because it's not cheap in the cyber world. So to Clay and to Kyle particularly, thank you for your time. We're really grateful. We hope to see many of you jumping into the inbox shortly as you register, and please do spread the word. But thank you again for joining us. Hope you found it valuable. Have a great day, and stay cool. Thank you. Goodbye.